All right, we are live, y'all. Ladies, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. Let's do this. What's up, everybody? We are live. Welcome to another session of the Golf Club Podcast. You guys already know my name is Will. I'm this host of this show, the number one Polynesian podcast in the world. Oh, let's get it on. What's up, everybody? We have a great show for you guys today. As you guys can see, we have a full panel of beautiful ladies joining me for tonight's discussion from all around the world. Thank you so much for watching. I can already see the viewership. I can see the viewership going up already. I can see you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in. So if you're tuning in for the very first time, thank you so much for always tuning in for my weekly shows every single Saturday where we talk about modern dating and relationships. And of course, everybody out there to subscribe to my channel, people to support my channel, always watch my daily shows. Thank you so much for all your love and support. You guys already know what to do. If you love the content, support my channel and appreciate the journey, my podcast journey. Press and smash that like, subscribe button. I do have a quick disclaimer for everybody out there under the age of 18.
This content is not suitable for the children under the age of 18 without adult supervision. Please be advised.
Please be advised if you're under the age of 18. I know we're going to be talking about having mature and adult conversations about modern dating and sex and relationships. So, if you're under 18, go to sleep. All right, go to sleep right now. All right, no, no worries. So, everybody, of course, don't forget this is a live show. So, we do have the live chat. So, always appreciate you guys tuning in. Always sending you your live feedback, your opinions, your perspectives on the live chat. Always interested to hear what you guys think, especially the different topics that we're always going to discuss every single podcast. So definitely let me know where you guys tuning in from. And of course, definitely let me know what you guys think. And of course, this is a public show. So if you're not familiar with my content for the very first time, I do allow the audience to be part of the conversation. So I'm going to post the public link on the live chat on YouTube. So if you're watching this from Twitch, if you're watching this from Facebook, you have to come to YouTube. Click on the link. It's going to be pinned to the top of the screen. And you can be part of the podcast as well. I know there's a lot of people out there, whether you agree or disagree. I know I have a lot of supporters, but also know I have a lot of haters out there.
How dare you?
But yeah, to all my haters out there, hate, agree or disagree, I'm always open to have an open conversation. So whether I don't think having a different opinion is a reason to hate anybody. But like I said, let's have an open conversation. So always invite everybody to come on, especially the people that disagree with me. And I would love to hear your conversation and why you disagree and have a conversation with you. But don't forget, we do have the super chat donations. I always appreciate you guys always supporting me financially with your pockets through the super chat donations. So obviously, if you guys have a specific question or topic that you guys want us to discuss to the panel, or if you have a question to one of these beautiful ladies, ask it through a super chat donation. I'll definitely make it a priority. I'll put it to the top of the screen and read it out for you. And of course, I'll give you a shout out. And of course, I'll give the opportunity to the ladies to respond to answer some of your questions. If you have some. So thank you so much for all your super chat donations and always donating to my channel. Every single donation will be reinvested back to my content to give you guys better quality content. And of course, I'm launching my podcast studio at the end of this year, going to 2023, and to make sure I can have live podcast in studio. So thank you so much for everybody out there. But without further ado, that's pretty much all my YouTube stuff real quick. And I just want to give a super shout out to the ladies, the panel real quick. Ladies, thank you so much for being on here tonight. I'm excited to have you guys on. And I see some comments already here. I see two wonderful said, Will, I'm only here for the ladies. Oh, nice. Good to know, man. Good to know. All right. Good to know. Well, whenever you hear from me or hear from the ladies, I'm just glad you're here anyway. Just glad you're on the podcast and tuning in tonight. Thank you so much to Wonderful for tuning in. We have a great show for you guys tonight. And of course, yeah. I see one more person's about to jump on. Here we go. And hello, Emma. And yes, ladies, definitely thank you for jumping on, Anna. Excited to have you on tonight. Thank you for making it in just in time. But ladies, I know a lot of people watching this right now. They probably don't know who you are. So can you give yourself a quick introduction, your name, your age, what do you do, and what's your relationship status? I'll start with you, Billie. Billie, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
My name is Billie. I'm a content creator on TikTok. I focus on women empowerment, healing, celibacy, and I am single, and I've been single for like the last year and a half.
All right, no worries, no worries. All right, thank you so much, Billie, for tuning in. Excited to have you on. Let me pass it to you, Maria. Maria, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
I'm Maria. I'm 28 and I'm into fitness and sales right now.
All right, no worries. And what's your status?
Right now I'm dating somebody.
Oh, nice. All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you so much, Maria. I'm really glad to have you on for tonight's show. And I see T on the live chat said, "What's up? What's up? What we fake caring about today?" I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out tonight. We'll find out tonight on tonight's discussion. All right, thank you so much, Maria. I'll pass it on to Jessica. Go ahead, Jessica, and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm 30. I'm an attorney and I'm recently single.
All right, no worries. Excited to have you, Jessica. It's always good to have two besties on the same panel, on the same podcast. So thank you for jumping on, especially last minute. Thank you for jumping on, Jessica. Glad to have you on.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Lizah. Yep, no worries.
Hi guys, my name is
all the way
Lizah.
from down under. Go ahead.
I'm an entrepreneur, mum to 5, and I'm 28 years old.
All right, great, nice. All the way from down under. Thank you so much, Lizah. Excited to have you on. And I'll pass it to you, Sarah. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am 42 years old, so I'm like the old lady of the group here. I create content online. I have a website and a YouTube channel called Everyday Starlet, and I'm active on Instagram as well. And I am recently divorced, currently single.
All right, no worries. All right, thank you, Sarah. And Sarah, I love that mic, by the way. It's just
Thank you.
I can't
I
get
feel
my
very
eyes
professional.
I need to set my game up, guys. Give me a super chat donations. I'll get a mic like that.
They're not that expensive. You can get them on Amazon.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I'm jumping on tonight. And last but not least, Emma. Emma, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm 26. I'm in the UK and it is very early here. So excuse my husky voice. It's very early in the morning. And I am polyamorous. So I'm currently dating 3 different people.
All right. No worries. No worries. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you for jumping on tonight. And thank you, ladies, for all your lovely introductions real quick. Yeah, let's get right into it. And let's get the podcast going. So, ladies, I'm going to bring up the very first topic. So I have a viral video that I saw that was trending on TikTok. It's related to the topic that we're going to discuss tonight. And prepare yourselves. It is a hot topic. So we're going to have some hot conversations to start off the podcast real quick. But just make sure everybody's here. Cool. So let me play the video real quick. And then I'm going to ask you guys for your reaction and your thoughts about the video. All right. So I'm going to put everybody just to make sure that the quality of the video is a lot better for the audience so they can hear it better. So I'm just going to put everybody on mute. Give me 1 second. And then I'm going to play the video right now. And then let me know what you guys think. I think it's about 1 minute, a minute video. So.
Too masculine.
No, women aren't too masculine nowadays. The problem.
All right. You guys can hear it? Okay, cool. All right. So this is a video I saw that was going viral on social media. And then we're going to talk about it tonight. So I'm going to play that video right now.
A lot of women nowadays are just too masculine.
No, women aren't too masculine nowadays. The problem is that you associate success, strength, and independence with masculinity. And so the independence makes you uncomfortable. Here's my question. You want to complain about women being too independent when you've proven time and time again that we can't be dependent on you. He says later in the video that no man wants to battle a woman for dominance. But who's battling? We don't want control over you. We're just no longer willing to share control over ourselves. He says, don't let society trick you into believing that being soft, kind, nurturing, and allowing is a bad thing. And we know that being kind isn't a bad thing, but we also know that we're no longer obligated to be kind to you. So it's not a question of masculinity versus femininity. It's a shift from need to want. And that independence means that women no longer have to accept the bare minimum from you.
All right. Okay. All right. So this video was going pretty viral on TikTok. So there was a lot of comments. There was a lot of comments on that video. There was a lot of conversation between the men and women. What a lot of the men are saying in modern society. A lot of women today are very masculine, and don't know how to be feminine. What a lot of the men are saying is like, masculine men, they want feminine women. And then I heard from the feminists, from the side of the women. Obviously, you saw the response from that lady. What they're saying is a lot of men don't know how to adjust to handle a strong, independent, uh, masculine woman. It's not a problem with the women. It's more of a problem of the men. So I'm going to open. So pretty much, we're going to open up this discussion tonight. I want to hear what you guys think. So the question I want to bring up, ladies, because the question that I got brought up, are women today in modern society 2022, are they too masculine? So I want to ask you guys what you think about this topic. And like I said, just to make sure we're on the same page, we'll all go one by one. So let's make sure that we'll each take a turn to make sure we can share our thoughts. And then, of course, we'll open after everybody has gone, we'll open up for open discussion. So if you agree or disagree with somebody said on the panel, make sure you write it down on a piece of paper. So that way, when we go to the open discussion, then we can go do the back and forth. All right, I'll start with you. Sarah. Sarah, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think our modern women today in 2022 are like that guy said? Do you think that they're too masculine? What's your thoughts about? What's your reaction about the video, and then what's your thoughts about the topic?
Well, actually, I saw this video on TikTok, so I've seen it before. And my main focus of my content right now is actually on masculine and feminine energies. So that's primarily what I study and what I talk about. And I mean, I understand the discussion back and forth. My view on masculine and feminine energies is that they're energies that live within all of us, but we all each contain a core energy. And that core energy is the one that we're just most ourselves in. We're the most comfortable in. We're kind of at our best selves in. And statistically, the statistics show that most men are masculine at their core and most women are feminine at their core. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can't tap into either energy whenever we need to. And most of the time in most people's lives, we have to tap into both energies. But there's one energy in particular that we're really just, we act as our best selves in. So it's my belief that over time, and I don't think it's just modern day, I mean, unless you want to consider modern day the past few decades, is that we've really structured our whole society to value masculine traits and masculine qualities, masculine achievements, masculine goals. And we've really pushed that on women from a very young age, as in they have to earn things, they have to achieve things, they have to view the world in a very masculine way. And that's not the way that most women are at their best. Doesn't mean women can't be successful at that. Doesn't mean some women can't enjoy that. But we're really conditioned to be that way. The problem is, if you want sexual polarity in a relationship, sexual polarity needs a masculine partner and a feminine partner. So when you get in those situations where you have women who step into their masculine energy and then they get into a relationship with a man who is naturally masculine, they're not going to be sexually attracted to each other. And you're going to lose a lot of that heat, that fire, that thing that keeps a relationship passionate. You can be very good friends, but you're not going to have that sexual attraction. And very often what happens is when you have women who get into this very masculine world and this very masculine energy, and they rely so much on their masculine, they tend to either attract men who tend to be more in their feminine energy, which is much more in flow. It's when these women always complain that they always meet guys who just want to go with the flow. That's very feminine energy. And they're not attracting men who are really stepping into that masculine leadership. Now, or they get into a relationship with a masculine man, but they're just butting heads all the time. And that's part of the problem. And so I think the issue, it's a back and forth kind of thing, because you get a lot of women who are very much in their masculine. They're not attracting men who are a masculine counterpart, which is really what most women are looking for. And they don't feel safe to necessarily be in their own feminine energy. So it ends up being this conflict. And a lot of men are arguing that, well, women are too masculine, but yet many men today are not taught that they need to step into their masculine energy. Most people believe that masculinity needs to be taught to men. It's not a natural progression. And we have a serious lack of healthy masculine leadership in our society today. So most men aren't being initiated into their masculine energy. So many men are kind of staying in this sort of little boy feminine flow, and they're not stepping into that, which isn't creating a safe space for women to feel like they can be in their feminine energy. So many women develop their masculine. So you end up with this society of women who are overly masculine because men aren't stepping into that role, and men aren't stepping into that role because many women aren't letting them. And that's where we get this. I mean, that's what the really the root of this video is. This man is basically like, yeah, women are too masculine. And then you have a woman who's like, well, because you're not stepping up and being the man. And it's like, well, somebody has to go first. And I would make the argument that it kind of needs to be men. I know men don't really want to hear that, but if men can't step up and learn how to lead properly, women are never going to feel safe to let them lead and be able to let their guard down. And I think women definitely have a long way to go as far as working on their feminine energy and stepping into their full self and their true self. But men really need to step up to the plate in order to make that possible. It's got to be a both and situation.
All right, no worries, no worries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah. I love that answer, and a lot of things I agree with. But I pass it on to you, Lizah. Lizah, what do you think? What do you think? What's your reaction to this video, and what's your topic about? What are your thoughts about modern women today too masculine?
Yeah, a lot of women are too masculine because it's a generational cycle. They've been born into it. Sometimes it's not even theirs. It's just been passed down. Like especially for solo moms that have had to raise their kids, so they're they've got to pull both weights, and then that's all the kid will know because that's all they've seen, and then so forth does the generation pass on. It's generational trauma that you don't know you have until you start coming into those kinds of situations where you realize that your own trauma that you hold or your limiting beliefs are sometimes not even yours. And it's unpacking that trauma, doing that shadow work to be able to release what no longer serves you, so you can step into your higher self.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
All right,
Sorry,
no
it
worries.
was too short or
Okay.
too long.
Hey, no, that's good. That's a good response. It's your response. Thank you so much, Lizah. I really appreciate that. I'll pass it to you, Emma. Emma, what do you think, Emma? Oh, you're on mute. Give me 1 second. Let me unmute you real quick. There you go. What's your reaction, and what are your thoughts about the topic?
I don't think in general that women are too masculine. I think masculinity and femininity in general are very, very strange concepts because they're socially constructed and they're constantly changing as a concept of what is masculine and what is feminine in the first place. If we're talking about masculine in how we currently associate certain values, we've got the masculine as this kind of, as Sarah was saying, this leadership role, authority, taking charge. It's a very active role. And then femininity is, as again in the modern sense, is designated as a more passive role. And as again, as Sarah was saying, that sense of women being I want to let my man do this. I want to let a man take this role. And so then developing that masculine energy in order to counteract that. But that is all socially constructed in the sense that there is no, in my opinion, there is no inherent sense of masculine or feminine. It's just what we expect men to be and what we expect women to be. So when people say women are too masculine, it's just people saying women aren't being what I expect women to be. They're not being what I've been taught women are supposed to be or what women should be. And when women are being active and taking control and taking direct action in their lives and not being passive or not being receptors and not just letting things happen to them, it contradicts this social contract that we've generated, and it can be threatening because any change or any threat to that social contract is going against something that we've designed to make society function at its best or make society function as it currently does. Do I think women are too masculine? No. I think that women taking an active role and taking that taking that active role in their lives is really important. And I think that deconstructing that idea of what a woman should be, and letting a woman have action and control and not just being a passive person, I think is a really positive thing. And it deconstructs these ideas of what a woman and a man should be. And I completely agree with Kaylee. I have also seen Kaylee's video before. I love her. I love her content. I think she has amazing things to say on TikTok. And I think that she has a lot to say about how women in the modern era, we have this kind of a real dichotomy between this status quo idea of what a woman should be or is supposed to be in order to attract a male partner or have a successful relationship with a male partner or whatever, and then going against that social flow. So, and personally, I'm always up for deconstructing that social flow. I think that disrupting that is always really interesting and really powerful. So do I think women are too masculine? Absolutely no. Be more masculine. Take more action, be more direct, be like, just have all the power that you can take. And if it threatens a man or it threatens the men around you, good. Because then you are taking control and you are doing what you want for you. I don't think that women are taking these masculine roles necessarily because men aren't taking up the plate. I think that they're doing it because they want to be their own person and take control over their own lives. That's my opinion.
All right, no worries. All right, thank you for sharing that, Emma. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. Appreciate that. Let me pass it on to Maria. Maria, what do you think, Maria? What's your reaction to the video, and what's your thoughts about the topic? Oh, let me put your.
Oh.
There you go. Oh, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I don't really think that women are too masculine, although it is confusing nowadays because a lot of women do want to be like fully equal and they don't want to feel like, I don't know, I feel like nowadays it's just kind of confusing with everything. But I think that a man might feel threatened, like she said. If somebody is too strong of a woman, it makes them feel uncomfortable because as the man, they should be like the provider, they should be the leader. And I also think that a lot of men nowadays lack that like masculinity that isn't toxic, because a lot of people also say that like masculinity is toxic when it's not. It's just that there's not a lot of masculinity that is the provider, the protector that, you know, a lot of women seek. So I think it's kind of like a mixture of both, because a lot of people nowadays, a lot of women nowadays, they want to be equal. So then they want to like, you know, show that they're capable of doing everything that the man can do, and might make the man feel uncomfortable and threatened because, you know, they want to feel like they're the provider and like they're the dominant one. But I don't think it's necessarily that they're too masculine. I don't know. It's kind of confusing with everything, with all of the like, equality and everything. But I don't think that they're too masculine. I think that it's just really comes down to what, you know, how the man is, where he is with himself. If he's not like comfortable with himself, he's not going to feel, you know, comfortable compared to a woman who is like a strong, independent woman, you know. But a man that is confident and he's like secure, he's gonna, you know, he's not gonna have a problem with that. That's what I think.
All right, no worries, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Maria. I appreciate it. Don't forget, guys, if you're watching this right now on the live chat, I just posted a public link on the live chat. So if you guys want to be part of the discussion, you can definitely jump on. Definitely would have you guys come on, and especially if there are other fellas out there. I know a lot of this panel are women, so we'd love to hear the feedback of the fellas, so we can hear your perspective as well. But pass it on to you, Jessica. Jessica, what do you think? What's your reaction to the video, and what's your thoughts about the topic, Jessica?
So I would consider myself a pretty strong and independent woman. Obviously, I'm an attorney, and I know that for some people, like some men, that can be kind of a turnoff because obviously I'm financially independent. But I've actually found with the men that I've dated, they kind of see me as like a boss, and they're proud of the fact that I'm an attorney, and they like will praise me for my career, so to speak. But it's also, I think, because I am very, like, when I feel safe in my relationships, I'm actually very submissive, and I give my partner their due role as the quote unquote leader of our relationship. And that's not to say I'm not their equal and I don't have a say in our relationship, or like I don't, voice my opinion. But at the same time, like, they're the protector and the provider for a reason. I'm not trying to be the protector and the provider. So I think that it's not about women being too masculine. I kind of would reject the idea that being a strong, independent woman is being masculine. I think what the man was more referring to is like when women don't allow men to be the providers and the protectors, when they want to either take control and they want to do roles that traditionally fall in line with the man. So like, they don't allow themselves to have the car door opened, or they don't allow themselves to have dinners paid for, or they don't put expectations on men in the way that they should. So like, I know some friends of mine are like, I don't know, I feel kind of bad about having him always pay, or I don't, why does he have to walk on the outside of the street so I'm on the inside of the street? To me, that's just common gentlemanly manners. And I think as a woman, you should expect that from a man. And I don't think it deprives you of your strong, independent woman status simply by allowing the man to be a man. I understand Emma's position as well about like women stepping into their power and taking power where they can get it. I think it's a balance of being strong and independent to the outside world and like with your friends and your other relationships. But I do think for a relationship to work, there does need to be, like Sarah mentioned, a feminine energy and a masculine energy. And for me personally, I prefer to be the feminine energy in my relationships when I feel safe, because I definitely have found myself to be the masculine. When I don't feel safe, then I do push back. Then I do take on a more assertive role and disregard his feelings and disregard his traditional role because I don't feel safe. I don't trust him to lead.
All right, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. Appreciate that. And last but not least, Billie, what's your final thoughts before we open up for open discussion? So, ladies, after Billie, definitely let me know on the private chat if you want to go start off the open discussion, if you want to talk about some things that was shared tonight. But go ahead, Billie. What's your thoughts? What's your reaction to the video? And what do you think?
So I feel like, so I've seen that video as well. And I even remember in the before the stitch, before Kaylee, I believe, he was also talking about like a lot of men nowadays aren't even providing for us to like for us to be submissive or be that kind of or be feminine to them. And I think Kaylee kept on going on into that discussion of that. But I think it's like traditionally women were not working back in the day, and as times have gone by now we are also providing for ourselves. And I think like a lot of times people equate like we have to, like, I think somebody else said this, we have to, while we're working, we are providing for ourselves. So we don't really have time to do all these other things that are considered feminine, like the gender roles things. Like if I'm working, I don't have time to always cook or to always stay home and those kinds of things. But I'm kind of nervous, you guys. but I also agree with Jessica on the fact that like if I feel safe, I'm going to be feminine. A lot of times, like for going back to my main point about like the traditional role, men used to work and they used to provide, and like that makes sense for me to do things at home. But if I don't have time for that because I'm working, and then you end up calling me masculine, then it doesn't make any sense because you're not being masculine yourself. And I also feel like in this generation right now with this whole our modern woman too masculine, a lot of times people are projecting their own types to all women rather than just like going to find women that they actually are attracted to. Like, for example, if I want a woman who follows traditional gender roles, they're out there, but we always like are stuck like on like, oh, I don't like this type of woman, so I'm going to make a judgment about all women in general, or like women do the same thing about men. But I don't think modern women and doing that work does not leave us enough time to go back to the traditional roles like back in the day. And also I think like another reason is that where women back then didn't have the option to leave specific relationships. Like if they were going through things, they had to stick by there. And a lot of men are threatened by that. Now we have the option to leave and we're not going to deal with things as much. And I think a lot of going into the discussion of always needing a man, we don't need men anymore. And I think it's more so like if I'm working and I'm providing for myself, it's like I had the option to want a man, but I don't need that. And I think that's like moving like the way men are, because men move in a way that they don't need women in a sense when it comes to providing and stuff like that. So I think like, yeah. I think the fact that we aren't needing men, that is like going away from the traditional roles, and a lot of people see that as masculine. That's it.
All right. No worries. Thank you so much, Billie. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for all you ladies for sharing it. Let me just go with some comments real quick on the live chat. Thank you for everybody in the live chat. Whether you agree or disagree, always appreciate you guys sharing what you guys think. I think TL said, women aren't too masculine. They do, however, employ some of the masculine traits that benefits them and disregard the masculine traits that is sacrificial. Thank you for sharing your opinion on the live chat. Always appreciate you. And then Too Wonderful said, women want to be providers and protectors. Okay, what happens during a armed robbery? Who is usually on the front line protecting their family? All right, no worries. Thank you for everybody in the live comments. Whether you agree or disagree, I always appreciate what you guys think. But ladies, I do want to open up real quick. Everybody had a chance to share your opinion. I know a lot of you guys have different opinions. Did anybody have anything they want to reply to anybody, or did you disagree on certain things? I would like to hear your thoughts on that. I want to open up for open discussion. Who wants to go first?
Well, I had a few thoughts on some things that people mentioned. It seemed to be an overall theme where the subject of equality kept coming up. And I think that that's where we step into the modern thinking, because there was this very limited traditional idea that because the man was the protector and provider, that he was more important. And in reality, men and women are equally important. And if we want to talk about masculine and feminine, or men and women, we're equally important. Like, we literally cannot survive as a species if we both don't exist. You need both. So the idea that either one would be more important than the other is actually just completely ridiculous, because we're both so essential. And also the idea that, and like Emma mentioned, the concept of the feminine as a passive role. I don't ever view it as a passive role, because in reality, and that the traditional idea of feminine could be considered that, but as far as feminine energy, I consider it more of a receptive role. And the more that women step into their power, the more that they have the option to, whether it be submit to a man's leadership or whatever word that you want to use, they have the option to always decide whether or not a man is safe to do that or not. Whereas in certain times in history, women didn't have that option. They really had to just submit to a man regardless of that. Whereas now that women are stepping into their power, they always have the choice. Okay, do I want to submit to his leadership, or do I not want to? And I think that that's something that it's a mindset shift that I think a lot of people need to step into, because I do think there are a lot of women who, if you asked them, and not all women obviously, but if you really asked them, like, what energy do you want to be in? Do you want a man to take charge and lead the relationship? Most women at their core are going to be like, yeah, I don't want to be the one giving the orders and telling him what to do all the time and having to plan the dates and make all the decisions. And not that we're not capable of that, but deep down, I think many of us want to submit to a strong, healthy, safe, masculine leadership. That said, we have to have the confidence and strength within ourselves. If that leadership is not safe, if it is not in integrity, if he's not acting, from an open heart space, that we can say, no, I'm not going to submit to you. And I think that that's a really important distinction, that we kind of, when we start getting into the idea of like, okay, does this mean it's like the old school idea of a woman being feminine because she does anything a man says? That's the mentality we kind of have to get out of. That's not a passive role, it's more of a receptive role, but we always get to decide whether we want to open to his leadership or we want to shut down and just rely on our own.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely sharing that, Sarah. Ladies, anybody want to reply or add on to what she said? Nope. Okay. No worries. I do want to. I do. I do want to. I have a question for some of the ladies, and I just want to say some things real quick because I disagree with the majority of everything said, but I appreciate your opinion. But the biggest word I heard from a lot of women was a lot of men feel threatened. A lot of masculine men are very insecure, are very independent, independent, strong, ambitious women. And I know, Emma, you brought up that masculinity and femininity is often a social construction based on the expectations society has between men and women, and that determines masculinity and femininity. Um, I totally disagree. I think I do a lot of reading and research when it comes to our biology, and I agree with what Sarah said. Even though we can't have both traits of masculinity and femininity, but into our core, our biology, and when we are born, there are research and science that show that there are certain traits that we are naturally born with, and we're more likely to have the difference between men and women. So, usually men are more natural, tend to have more masculine traits, who are more like leadership, independence, are more assertive, more disagreeable. Women tend to have feminine traits to their core, who are more caring, loving, and nurturing than men. So there are different preferences. There are different biological differences between men and women. It comes to their personality and our nature, and I think that plays a role with our masculinity and femininity. And I think there are studies out there that show that we have different preferences, what we are sexually attracted to. What they found in women is women are more attracted to a man's financial and educational attainment. So they love a guy that has a high socioeconomic status. So women tend to date men out of the same level or higher. So that's why they usually men who are very ambitious, very assertive, very independent. They have the financial stability and economic stability. Women are very attracted to those men. But what they found in men, men are attracted to a woman's youth, beauty, and femininity and fertility. So we have different sexual preferences of what we're attracted to. So oftentimes I do hear from a lot of women that said, oh, especially the women who are very strong, independent, and ambitious, oh, men are very insecure. I wouldn't say men are not insecure. I would just say that we have preferences. We have different preferences of what we're attracted to. So just because a man doesn't want to date a woman that's ambitious and strong and independent doesn't mean that we're not. Doesn't mean that we can't handle you. Doesn't mean we can't handle you as a woman. It's just biologically in our nature, we're attracted to youth, beauty, femininity, and fertility. So men understand that also that our traits. I think one of the biggest issues today is our traits. Usually back in the day, in the very traditional relationships where we played biological roles, I think there's a unique balance when we have a feminine and masculine because our traits complement each other. So a woman's very feminine, nurturing, caring, loving, very agreeable. You'll naturally be able to be compatible with a guy that's very ambitious and very disagreeable. But if our traits are the same, so if I'm strong, assertive, disagreeable as a man, and I meet with a woman who's strong, independent, assertive, and disagreeable as a woman, it's going to be very hard to build a relationship because our traits will combat each other. So I think that's one of the things that we're starting to see today. So even though the social norms of what societies, I don't have a problem with women going out there pursuing their careers, leveling up and being successful. That's great. That's great for women. I think that's a beautiful thing. But when it comes to the dynamic of a sexual relationship, I think what a lot of women find it hard to do is to leave that masculine energy or traits that she needed to use to be successful, is to be in her feminine when she comes into a relationship. But what a lot of women find it hard to do is to turn that off and turn that back on. And what the men are saying is like, look, get your money. Like we don't have a problem to be successful, but we just want feminine women. And that's what we attracted to. And I think that's the problem is like we're trying to go against our own biology, and we're trying to tell men what they should be attracted to, and then a lot of times the men are what the men are saying and what the women should be attracted to. But when it comes to our biology, what we're naturally attracted to, you can't tell somebody what they like or don't like what they're, and if you don't like what I like, then you're insecure. It's just we have different things that we're attracted to, and I think that's one of the things I do see in a lot of women. Because you guys all mentioned that, he's threatening, he's very insecure, but I don't think it's nothing. I don't think it has nothing to do with insecurity. But I would say there are men. I will agree there are some men out there that may be insecure of a strong, ambitious woman. But a majority of the masculine men that I know that have built value, have good morals, have values. They work their lives to build their life to be financially stable and to achieve their ambitions and goals in life. These guys are confident. They're not afraid of masculine women. It's just they just prefer feminine women. What anybody have any response to that? Like, do you guys have an opinion about that? You didn't get. Oh, go ahead.
I do. I really appreciate your opinion. It's really nice. Like, this whole forum is really interesting for me. I'm so sorry about my husky voice. Like, I totally appreciate. I never meant to imply, if I implied it earlier, that men are insecure around masculine women. That's not what I meant to say, if that's how it came across. Because again, it is a case of, like, men aren't a monolith. There are some men who might be intimidated or threatened by masculine women. That doesn't mean that all men are, of course, because men are, it's such a vast group of people, you can't possibly, pinpoint them into that kind of, such a niche thing like that, of being like, that's a thing that all men are, or all men do. But I do disagree with you in the sense that while I appreciate the statistics and the studies that have been done, I would argue that saying that men are inherently more leadership in a more leadership role, or inherently more assertive, or inherently more dominant, or inherently more of these things, and then women are inherently more caring or nurturing. Personally, I don't believe that. I think that when we've looked at other studies, I mean, while you look at it in a sense, but it's like, you're viewing that through the lens of a society that is constructing the people around you. We can't take people out of society to view them in a completely independent world, if that makes any sense. So personally, I think that these ideas of men and women are so indoctrinated into our society, so embedded in us, that you can't raise men and women, even as little children. You can't raise them without those expectations, without those gender roles, without those ideas being present. We have studies that date that children have a distinct understanding of gender roles, gender relationships, and social expectations of gender concretely by age 6. They understand that, and that is so early to have such a very concrete understanding of what is ultimately an incredibly complex narrative of social norms. I don't think that it's an inherent thing that men have these roles and women have these other roles, personally.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. I know I have some public guests. Thank you, Daniela, for jumping on. But ladies, anybody wanted to respond?
Well, I was actually, it's interesting talking about children picking that up at the age of 6. I don't know when those studies were done. I don't know that study specifically, but you could very easily argue that in our modern day society right now, children aren't really growing up seeing traditional gender roles. In fact, most children aren't actually even growing up in 2-parent families anymore. So it would kind of lend itself to believe that maybe these things are deeper than just what people are seeing in everyday life, because most children are not seeing that as often as they used to. And I do know there are studies that in other countries and other cultures, I believe I heard Jordan Peterson talk about a study that when you actually have societies where they structure it not set up for equality, but set up for personal choice, like people can make their own choice as to what they want to do, that most women step into very traditional feminine roles and most men step into traditional masculine roles. And that's just with completely freedom of choice and not stepping in and trying to make things quote unquote equal, so to speak. So I think that lends itself to believe that it's not just a social construct, that there is some biology to it. social constructs, I'm sure, have something to do with it, but I think there is more biology to it, and it's not quite that cut and dry.
I had a question for Jessica, but I just want to reply real quick to Emma and Daniela. I know you wanted to add on. I'll come right to you, and I thank you for jumping on as a public guest. To respond to you, because you just said that you don't believe that men and women are inherently masculine or inherently women based on our biology. I think one of the things you can look at to kind of prove that is look at the different type of choices of careers we go into. If you look at the choices that we go into, men are willing. There's a big difference that men are willing to go into careers that earn more income. It requires more ambition, requires more work. When women tend to go to careers for social, so men are interested in things, and women are interested in social work. So that's why you see a lot of women in teachers, nursery, and social workers. They're in jobs where it involves a lot of women. I mean, not women. It involves a lot of people dealing with people, and that's why women are more socially better, more socially calibrated than men. You guys have better social skills than men. We suck as far as social skills. That's why we're weird. And sometimes we come up as weirdos sometimes on dates. All right, but men, we're interested in things. So that's why you see a lot of guys in the STEM field, science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. So we go into, so if you look at our career choices, and obviously we all live in modern society, Western society, where we have freedom of choice, right? We have freedom of choice to choose, regardless of our background. We have that choice to choose what we decide to go into. And what you're seeing is, the majority of men are still going into roles that traditionally works out with the roles that they have as being a masculine man, being really assertive, going into careers that are very assertive, ambitious, competitive. So men tend to go into those careers, and women, even though they have freedom of choice to do whatever they want, there's only a few selected women, minority women, who tend to go into very competitive careers. But most women still go into those careers that fits their natural feminine role, which is nurturing, caring, and loving. That's why most women today, even though 60% of women are more college educated than men, and 40% of men graduating. So you guys are getting more degrees. You guys are going to college, but at the end of the day, even with all those degrees and better education than men, women are still choosing to go into careers that fits more of their feminine role, as far as being nurturing, caring, and being willing go into social work. So I would ask Jessica, because I know you're a lawyer, and this is one of the things I always have a conversation. I know you're strong, independent, and very ambitious. You're very successful. And I know some of the words were thrown out as, women don't need a man, and women can be their own leader. My question to you ladies, if you're strong, independent, and successful, can you, if you have the ability to be the provider, the leader, the provider, protector, that traditionally that role was for a man, why is it hard for you to be with for a man that's not in that role, that's more, I guess, more feminine? He's not the strong provider, protector. He's not ambitious, not courageous, because you can feel that role as a woman, right? So why is it so hard? Because that's a conversation I hear a lot of women. I don't need a man. I can do this. I'm strong, independent. But if that's the case, then why is it hard for those women to just go with a guy that's not as ambitious, not as masculine, and just go with the feminine man? And I just want to ask you that question. Have you ever tried that dynamic, or you still want the man to be more successful than you, to be more masculine, to be more better of a leader than you?
I mean, I think I go back to what I originally said in terms of, even though I can provide for myself, it doesn't mean that I don't want. So I don't need necessarily a provider, but it doesn't mean I don't want a provider, right? Because at the end of the day, two bosses are better than one. And while I'm good where I'm at now, I could always be better. And I would like to have a partner that's on that same level, because if we're on that same level, we can only go up. If I'm dating a quote unquote feminine man who's beneath me, who's not as ambitious, who isn't as successful, I'm already at where I'm already where I'll be with him. So what's the point of having him? And I would kind of argue, if I'm already here, I'm not going to lower my standards to someone who's here. I would rather have someone meet me where I'm at, and then both of us level up in life. So while I don't need a man, it doesn't mean I don't want a man, but I also will not settle for a man that's not the right man, who can be the provider and the protector that allows me to give him that right and that role, so we can collectively level up. But I do kind of want to respond to something you previously said about men biologically being more sexually attracted to feminine women. I completely agree. I think that me being successful in my career and my life doesn't mean that I can't be the submissive partner to my, someone that I feel safe with. That being said, I actually recently had a conversation with one of my friends about him having an issue with the fact that the person he's dating is too dominant in the bedroom, and it makes him not be able to be dominant. And they're having issues. Like it is what it is. He hasn't had issues in the past with past partners when it comes to his sex life, but because this particular woman he's dating is incredibly dominant, it kind of emasculates him, and he's not able to be attracted to her. So I think that relationship wise, yes, there needs to be a balance, and each person needs to fulfill their roles. And it's not in a gendered role of like, I cook, I clean, I wash your clothes, I'm the wifey. We're a partnership, right? So everyone contributes to the relationship equally for the betterment of the relationship. That's how I see it.
Okay. All right. No worries.
Sorry, can I quickly interject? I just wanted to query something that you were saying there, like, because you said, like, I don't want to be with a man who's feminine because I don't want to be with a man who's beneath me. And I just want to query, like, why is feminine necessarily beneath? Because in my opinion, like, if you could be with someone, if you're a masculine woman and you're with a feminine man, does that necessarily mean that he's beneath you because he's feminine? Why does feminine have to be below? Why couldn't a balance of masculine and feminine energies be the key to that level up that you were suggesting? If it's about this kind of, we require both for success, if we require both for a successful relationship, wouldn't being with a feminine man who's really attuned with that feminine energy, who allows you to be the masculine, powerful, empowered woman that you are, why wouldn't that be the key to further success? Why would you want someone who's essentially, you said, on the same level? Is that kind of equating masculinity? Isn't that kind of going against what we've said before of needing that balance or needing the opposite in order to thrive?
I think what maybe got misconstrued is when I mean on my level, I mean like at my same financial status, my same education status, and what quote unquote that's quote unquote masculine. I don't consider myself masculine simply because I'm a successful woman. I still believe I'm very strongly in my feminine energy. With respect to the feminine being beneath me, quote unquote, I'm just saying that when a man isn't fulfilling the role of provider and protector, and it doesn't necessarily mean that because I know one of the other comments here was about being a blue collar worker and whether I would date a blue collar worker. It's not about someone earning the same amount of money as me necessarily, but it's someone that's willing to fill into the role of provider and protector regardless. So someone that's as successful as me doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the masculine and he's a masculine. It just means that we're at the same level socioeconomically, and I can still fulfill my feminine role within the relationship of letting him be the provider and the protector. Just that when we're on the same level financially or socioeconomically, we can only rise up together. Whereas if it's someone that's not on the same socioeconomic level, that inherently means I'm basically better off exactly where I am than with him, because I'm pushing him up, but he's not carrying his weight necessarily to push us both up collectively, is the way that I would see it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. I know Daniela, thank you for jumping on as a public guest. I know you wanted to add on to the discussion of what the ladies were sharing. Go ahead, Daniela. What's your thoughts about it, real quick?
Yeah, there's a few things. So in Jessica's sense, what she means in terms of feminine men, I can understand it as a man and exactly what she means. It's not so much feminine is below masculinity. It is the qualities and traits that a feminine man brings to the table. He is not going to take that leadership role that I'm guessing Jessica would want out of a man. So in that sense, if you're a feminine man, you take traits out of femininity, but not encompass the whole entirety of what femininity is to a woman. And men usually misconstrue the nature of a female if they delve into femininity. There's a cliche saying that I really enjoy sort of reading into it is that a peaceful man is not harmless, and a harmless man is never peaceful. And the meaning of that is that if you have a masculine man, he's willing to be peaceful in the presence of a woman who is feminine. So this whole idea that femininity is below masculinity, I don't agree. It's just that the traits that men deploy or employ being a feminine man isn't often what women look for vast majority of the time. Hence why we hear the sense of I have to be masculine, I have to take on this leadership role because the man wasn't showing me that. So therefore there is a need there biologically and by nature that women inherently look for in men. And when they fail now in society, when men fail to bring out this innate nature within them, it is implied and felt that there's a pressure for the woman to step into that role. The other thing I want to argue is that femininity and masculinity is not a social construct. It is only a social construct in the West. And the reason I'm saying that is if you go out and look at outside of Western society and go out to third world countries, these people are naturally within what they're biologically inclined to do. So for example, if you go into tribes in Africa or within the Pacific Oceans, you would see male and female working out by nature what they're mostly inclined and naturally fall into, which is masculine and femininity. Now, whether there's issues or not, that's a different debate. But it's only become a social construct when we look at it in the West, where we want to make everything fluid. Oh, this has to be fluid. This has to be fluid. My understanding of masculinity goes by two ways. Protector and provider, which is the whole cliche that everyone knows. But the second one is the willing full sacrifice in order to take up responsibility for oneself, family, and community, and to find meaning in that. So when I commented earlier, a vast majority of women nowadays aren't necessarily masculine, but they do employ a lot of masculine traits, which is mostly combativeness. Hence why they're very successful in corporate world. Because in order for you to be successful, you have to be combative, and you're usually combative against men. The other part of the trait to be masculine is the sacrifice that you have to make as a man, and that is to go into the dangerous jobs and be willing to take up on that risk in order to provide for your family. Those tend to be the things that are disregarded by women when they talk about masculinity. Whereas in our side of the fence is, if you need to be a masculine man, and you need to understand what that means. It means that you're willing to protect and to provide, and you're also willing to sacrifice yourself in that process. That is what masculinity is in its entirety. We are willing to step in front of the train, metaphorically, in order to fulfill a responsibility if it has meanings to me, to my family, and to my community. So, yeah, I wanted to add that on because I think there's such a confusing message that we're delivering, especially it's coming from women in general, is that we don't need men. Who needs men? And then turn around and complain about the men that they don't necessarily are attracted to, hence why you're not in a relationship with those men. But you're cherry picking the masculine man who's probably not attracted to you in the first place and saying that the quality of man that you've attracted, which is what's often labeled as beta male, and classifying masculine and weak men essentially, which is a real concern. I agree. It's a real concern. Weak men exist and they are increasing in numbers. But if I have to say, my thing here is that you women are pretty much the most important part of that variable, is that your expectation on men needs to reflect in the values and traits that you encompass as a woman. If you want men to be masculine, you have to demand masculinity with femininity. You can't combat masculinity with masculinity, because otherwise, the biggest thing that you women have done in terms of failing yourselves is the sexual marketplace. You have allowed essentially any man to gain access to sex, which drive no more incentives in men to actually build value in order to gain the access to safety within a woman's presence. And not only that, to build values in order to commit to a long life partnership with you. So if every man is having sex, there's no more incentive. So now it has to be an actively involved process, which is for me anyway, I enjoy that working with other men within my sector. But when we have these discussions, it's always missed out of the conversation where you play the most important part. Almost any heterosexual male wants the attention and the safety of a woman, in the sense that he can go out into the world and be at peace with any risk that he faces, just as he knows his woman is loyal and respectful and has the energy that he would like to retire to at the end of the day. That's all it is.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Daniela. I want to pass it to, I know Maria, I know you've been quiet a little bit, so Maria, did you have anything you want to add on real quick? I know you've been listening intently.
I actually had a question to what he was just talking about. It's slightly off topic of the whole masculinity thing, but when you mentioned the incentive of sex, I have a question, I guess, for more of like the male audience. Like, I've heard different responses for this, but if a woman has sex with you right away, is that supposed to be okay? Because I've heard different things, like I said. So he said the incentive, like, okay, like he already got what they wanted. But I know some people can have sex right away, stay together, and it works out. But then I've also heard that men don't want the women to have sex right away, or they won't take them seriously. I've heard both sides, so I'm just curious.
So you're saying that do we judge women differently if they have sex early?
Yeah, like, he just said right now, the incentive, if they have sex right away, like what else is there? They already got that. But I've seen both sides where people have had sex right away. They've had a well relationship. And then I've also seen or heard a lot of men say that, oh, they had sex right away, so they're uninterested and like they don't take them seriously and they wouldn't want a relationship with that person for that exact reason.
Okay.
Yeah,
Daniela,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, so as men, we operate on a different frequency as you do as women. Our frequency and what we find most fulfilling is respect. We can be unloved in relationship and be respected, and we will stay and we will fulfill whatever it is needed within our responsibility. Whereas most women prefer to be loved. They want accompanying respect with it, but you would be to prefer that love is prior to respect. An example of that is if you were feeling insecure about your body, you would want me to love you in the sense that I would have to try and word the way that I would express myself in a way that it comes off nicely to how you would like to hear it. If you would have preferred respect, you wouldn't want, most women would want men to be straight, completely honest, down the barrel, say it how it is, move on, which is vast majority of the time, that's not the case. So what does sex mean? If you're allowing a man to have sex with you first, essentially there's no mutual respect here. Why? You haven't met the man. Sex comes with a lot of complications. Not only that, it comes with a lot of quote-unquote risk. If you were to get pregnant, now you carry all the risk. And the man can pay child support, but inherently, he's got nothing to do other than clicking a paycheck at the end of every week or month, however it is. So why is that very important to a man who is genuinely interested in long-term commitment? It's because you don't either respect yourself enough to respect him in order to demand values out of him before having access to sex. So not all men will judge you. The men who want you purely out of sex will say, hey, great, yes, let's do it. This is a great opportunity for me. I get to have sex and move on to the next woman and no strings attached. But for a guy who's willing to put in and invest time in you and value and respect, those are the things that are often, by nature, it's instinctual. If a woman is allowing me to have sex with her, then does she not respect herself enough to respect me and say, hey, you're a man, you need me to say yes for you to gain access to sex. What are you bringing to the table? If I get pregnant, are you going to sacrifice whatever bachelorette life you're living now and be willing to take up the responsibility it is to be a father? So those things are half and half. There's a half of that equation is men that only want sex won't give a shit. They'll have sex, they'll move on, life goes on. But for the guys that are genuinely invested into dating you, wanting to gauge a long-term relationship, it's usually a thought process that that just runs in the background. Okay, if I'm having sex with this woman on the first night, is she really interested in a long-term relationship or not? There are exceptions to the rule, and I'm one of them. Me and my partner have been together for almost 7 years now, and we had sex on the first date. But by the time I was at that age, I was willing for commitment. So it carried on for another 9 to 12 months of dating and gauging each other out, whether we're fitting for each other or not. But most generally, men who are essentially what you're looking for will have some sort of judgment. Whether that's a deal breaker or not, up to the said men. But it's often a thought process that goes behind our head.
All right, no worries. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for that question, Maria. Billie, did you want to add on? I know hopefully your internet connection is working better now. You've been listening intently. Did you anything want to add on real quick, Billie?
I guess I wanted to touch on, because I heard the conversation about like talking about how to be masculine, you have to protect your family. And I will say, like, from the culture that I'm like around, I'm usually around Black culture, where women are usually single mothers, and they're the ones to protect everything. They will do anything for their children, and they're providing for everything while the men leave and do what they want. So it's like, is that does that not show that women can be quote unquote masculine? And also just like going back to that topic about like how women go to college and pick, like less, like more feminine careers. I also feel like we're conditioned from really young ages to be into more feminine things. And I feel like a lot of what influences who we become can also be because of what we are introduced to. So what do you say about that? Because let's say I was raised by my dad, and I know how to do a lot of masculine things. And I know I've met men who can't do even the simple things that I'm able to do, but that's because of what I was introduced to. But so that's why I think like femininity and masculinity is a social construct, because from the get-go, we are introduced to things like, you're a woman, you should do it this way. And it can lead in the future to you being into more feminine things. But what if like we were introduced in this world without, feminine roles or gender roles and those kinds of things? Are we not able to see like what the world could really be like without those gender roles? Because I've seen it happen. I've seen women be women be into more masculine things, but that's because they were introduced to those things and they had the option to do that. And even though like we could pick career,
Oh,
can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you're kind of upside down there, right? Sideways. No worries, but yeah, I wouldn't want to hear Sarah, but I think I just want to respond real quick, and anybody want to respond to what Billie shared? I think Sarah brought it up. I think I would argue that Sarah brought it up that today we're as woke as ever in today's culture, as far as going against the more traditional things that was probably more in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Ever since feminism started around the 60s and 70s, all of us were probably now 20s, 30s, and 40s. I would say that today, if you look at social media, look at the culture of what's been influenced out there, what's put out there in the media, I think you don't see traditional roles no more or advertised. Look at Disney. You can see that all the Disney movies, everything is against the traditional roles of a man and woman. So we have the LGBTQ movement. Now we have all these movements, and that's usually against the traditional role of back in the day. So I would agree with what Sarah brought up. I think if you grow up today, especially if you're a millennial, especially if you're Gen Z, Gen X, you're not growing up in an era of traditional roles no more. You're growing up in an era of fluidity that you can go against traditional roles. But that's why I brought up my point. Even the men and the women who grew up in this era, they are still choosing choices based on their biology. So even though the social constructs have changed, you can't ignore the biology that even though you can go to education, even though you can do whatever you want as a woman, there's a innate feeling for women that they just prefer certain things because it's more within their nature. So if this was in the 20s or 30s, 40s, I would agree. But we're as woke as ever in today's culture. And just if you look on TikTok, look at Instagram, look at the movies, look at the Hollywood, look at the newspapers. If you look at all these things, what's put out there for young kids to see is not the traditional masculine man, woman no more. So I would say that kind of defeats the argument of what you're saying. Anybody want to add on to that real quick, Sarah or
Yes.
anybody? Go ahead, Emma.
Sorry. So I completely agree that we are as woke as ever, in the sense that like things are massively getting better in terms of disrupting these expectations and these social norms. But I would argue that we haven't seen the impact of that world yet. Because, speaking as me, I was born in 1996. So I'm on that cusp of millennials to Gen Z. And I still rigidly had to fight against gender roles growing up. I've had to unlearn an enormous amount of social conditioning, an enormous amount of stuff that I've had to unpack and unpick. And things that I didn't even know were there. There was so much anti-racism work that I didn't realize was even built in until I actively started looking at it and dissecting it. And I was like, oh my word, the amount of things that were just in me that I didn't put there. And I was born, so 26 years ago. So yes, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, which is the one after that, they're being born now into this world, which is slightly better. But I'm a Gen Z millennial that was raised by Gen Xers and Boomers who had those traditional gender roles. So they will be imparting things onto us. We're not going to see the impact of the current world in terms of gender roles and social conditioning probably for another 20, 40 years, because it's going to be when they're raising their children that we're actually going to see whether these things have really shifted.
Okay, all right, no worries. No, Emma. Sorry, Sarah. No, you wanted to. Did you want to say something?
Well, one thing is, I'm technically a Gen Xer. I'm like the youngest of the Gen Xers. I was raised by Boomers, and I can tell you right now that in my generation, were raised by. We were really the first generation that was raised by people who were actively getting divorced. So most of the people in my generation were actually from single parent families. So I would argue that we're really seeing the results of that. But I would also notice that in this whole conversation, when we talk about gender roles, you notice that it's always the traditional female gender roles that people are trying to get away from. We're always dismissing and demeaning the roles of motherhood, the roles of keeping a home, the roles of cooking and cleaning. Those are the first things that we're like, we have to get rid of, as if they're less than and they're less important than the roles of being a protector and provider. And I understand like what Taniela was saying about, the concept of a man and his sacrifice and all of that stuff is 100% true. I totally agree with that. That said, for women, if you're talking about traditional women, they also have a huge sacrifice if they step into the role of being traditional. They have the huge sacrifice of sacrificing their body for 9 months, possibly not surviving childbirth, raising a child, actually feeding a child with her own body, keeping a home, not necessarily being able to be as much of a provider during that time because of the other responsibilities. That's also a huge sacrifice. Not saying that it is better or worse than a man's sacrifice, because at the end of the day, like I said, we're both equally important. So when we start getting into this, well, my sacrifice is better than your sacrifice, that's when we start butting heads. But the fact that we're programmed to think that escaping gender roles is always a woman needing to escape these female gender roles kind of goes to show that we really haven't placed a high enough value. And I think we're seeing that a lot with children who aren't being raised with a loving mother at home, being active in their lives, and also not being raised with a strong provider father in their lives as well. Not seeing those traditional family dynamics, is we're seeing a lot of what's happening now, kind of people not doing as well in school. You're seeing rates of crime, all kinds of stuff that are problems with that because we don't value those roles. It's like, I totally understand men wanting respect for valuing what they bring, but as a society as a whole, men and women, we also need to put value on the roles that being a mother, being a homemaker, being a traditional feminine woman brings to the world, because without that stuff, the world is pretty bland. I mean, it's just not, it's not as beautiful a world in general if we just eliminate all those things completely. So I'm not saying that women have to be, stay-at-home wives and mothers or anything like that, but the fact that we really demean that role and kind of make it seem like, oh, well, women have to be a stay-at-home wife and mother because that's the role, or we kind of diminish, like, well, she's lazy or she doesn't do anything. I mean, I've been getting in arguments with people on TikTok lately about the idea that, like, well, all she did was keep a home and have a baby. What did I made all the money. What did she do? And it's like, well, she did a lot. She created a human life and she took care of you and the family. So we need to value both, because if we don't value both, that's when we start butting heads.
I completely agree with you. I do absolutely completely agree with everything you just said, in the sense that we absolutely do have this devaluing of the female role and the devaluing of motherhood, and these, like you say, the whole thing of escaping gender roles is predominantly focused, it seems, on the female becoming male or it being able to be masculine, rather than the idea of the man having access to feminine energy, or the idea of embracing the feminine and embracing those values. And there's been a long history as well within feminism. You said feminism started in the 60s. It didn't. It started very, very long time ago, but we had second wave feminism in the 60s. And that was about it was the white cisgendered middle class woman who was becoming empowered at that time. And so it was about rejecting traditional gender roles, because that was the issue that kind of woman was experiencing. And we actually did make a lot of mistakes with it. So, because in the sense of, when women were saying, we want to be able to be in the workplace, we want to have access to the world of work, we want to be able to have bank accounts, but have financial independence. And that was all good things, but it didn't come with the balance of acknowledging the work that women have always put in, and the work and the value that women have always had. And the idea of the man being the protector and the provider was always, like you say, to provide. The idea was that man was making the money because that was the woman had actually earned that, and he was providing that with her. It was a joint effort. When the woman went into the world of work, it devalued the idea that the woman had ever been producing anything of value at all. And domestic labor and domestic value is a huge, massive workload. It is enormous. I mean, I think they actually worked out, and it's something like $10.3 trillion a year if you actually charge someone to do all the things that the average housewife does around the home. There is a massive devaluing of that, and we never acknowledged in the first place that it should have been a consideration of, well, if someone is providing for a household, a way of kind of equitably dividing things so it wasn't a single control over money or control over finances, because that's what it was really about. It wasn't necessarily about having that role in the workplace. It was about having the value for the work that you actually do. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing, and thank you so much for everybody in the live chat. Let's read some comments real quick. I see Luce G, first time seeing you on the live chat. Shout out to you. Said, women have sex on the first night, and it literally means nothing else. They can end up with the person or not. There doesn't have to be a massive thought process. All right, thank you for sharing that. Lucy, thank you for being on the live chat. I think two wonderful shared. During the 20s and 30s, we were going through a depression, war, and a changing technology. Men were automatically drafted into the military. Women didn't. All right. And then Mr. Anderson said, Sarah, thank you. Women are ashamed for being mothers and homemaker. All right. Thank you for Mr. Anderson, everybody on the live chat. Always appreciate you guys always sharing your comments. Yeah, we definitely took that topic and half the podcast already. I knew that was a hot topic, y'all. That was, like I told you guys, that was a hot topic going viral on social media. So I definitely want to spend the rest of the panel, the podcast, to talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. I'm gonna start with you, Sarah. Sarah, do you have a topic question that you want to bring up real quick? That you want to discuss, and we'll go right into it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know. Everything we've been talking about is just has been amazing. So I don't know. I don't know if I have anything specific off the top of my head, but I don't know. Are you gonna
come back to you.
Are you gonna start playing that clock thing again if I don't think of something really quick? Yeah, come back to me. Come back to me. Thank you. There you go. That's it.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, I'll pass it to Jessica. Jessica, what's your topic? What's your question? And we'll bring it up real quick.
I don't know if I have a question, but I'm seeing someone in the chat say, where can I find traditional women in the modern day? So I think maybe if we tie that to like online dating and apps, because I find that whole situation very interesting about whether apps are really successful, not successful, whether there's a value to using apps. I mean, I think kind of going back to what Daniela was saying, there is an incentive for men to chase the women. And I think apps to some extent have made that so much easier because you literally have a plethora catalog of women in front of you that you can just swipe, or men. I mean, women also have that option of plethora of men, or if you're polyamorous or bisexual or whatever, you have both. You got both, double the catalogs. So maybe talk about that, whether or not we think dating apps are really helping the current dating world or hindering it more.
Okay, all right. So I think Jessica's topic is in this. The dating apps, do they work or not? Do they work? Do they work to bring good relationships and long-term marriage? So yeah, let me start with you, Billie. Billie, what do you think? What do you think about dating apps? Do you think that's a good strategy to find a good partner in a long-term commitment relationship? What do you think?
I am the type of person who doesn't believe in looking for someone and just like finding someone. Like, I feel like when you look for someone, you kind of settle for anything versus like when you just let things happen. I do feel like there's a lot of serial daters on there, and I also feel like from my age group, there's a lot of people just looking to hook up, and so it's just, I don't know. I haven't dated in a long time, so I haven't really looked into it. But when I was in the dating apps, like it was just another place of hookup culture, and like using Tinder and Bumble and all those things. A lot of people are just looking to have fun, and I haven't seen it as really beneficial for actually finding someone for real. I think like for me, what I've heard a lot of people have success in is like going to do things you like to do on your free time, or where you'd want your potential partner to be into. Like, let's say you are into hiking and those kinds of things, you're going to go to those places where you will find the type of person who's interested in the same things as you are. But I'm not really a big fan of online dating and using dating apps because I just haven't had good what is it called? So things happen from them.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Billie. And I'll pass it to you, Maria. Maria, what's your thoughts on dating apps?
For me, it's not my thing. I've actually never dated anybody on an app. I'm more like, I'd rather meet somebody and just have an organic, natural connection without looking for something. No judgment for those that do. I know somebody that has met their husband from an app. They're super happy. For me, it feels like unnatural because I feel like everybody's on there seeking something. I feel like it is hookup culture. I don't take it that seriously. I wouldn't be able to, I feel like, but I know a lot of people, they do have successful relationships from it. It's just personally not my thing. I'd rather just have something more natural. And it also makes me wonder, like, how often are you meeting people on these apps? And it's just not my style. It's just not for me. But
Okay. All right. No worries. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Maria. And also, let me just pass it to you, Emma. Emma, what do you think about dating apps?
Dating apps. So I personally I'm ambivalent towards dating apps. Like, I think that they serve a purpose. I don't particularly like them. the main issue I have with them is just feels like a lot of admin. Like talking to people that you don't know, and you have like all these little messages binging in, and it's just like, oh, I don't know if I actually want to invest all this time into something that's maybe not going to necessarily happen. Like you say, if you're having an organic conversation with someone, you get much more of a sense of a person really, really quickly. But that being said, I met my girlfriend through a dating app, and we have a really good relationship. She's amazing. And I met my ex-girlfriend through a dating app as well, and we had a great relationship, and it was amazing. So I do think it's just another way of meeting people. But I do think whether it's a precursor to having a successful relationship, I think it's as successful as meeting someone in real life. In regards to the specific question of finding traditional women or finding feminine women, I definitely think that with dating apps, in the sense of like the way that things are more filtered nowadays, and like the different preferences that people can put on dating apps, I do think you can find people that are maybe more inclined to your interests or your preferences quicker, easier. I mean, if you're meeting people organically, like say at a party, you're probably going to have something in common with everyone in the room because you've been invited by the same person. If it's at a bar, maybe not. But like I know on some dating apps, like you can put things like your love languages, for example. And I know that women who put acts of service are 6 times more likely to get hits than women who put other love languages as their top love language. And I just think that's really interesting because it's not actually compatible in sense of it's not actually most men's love language. It's just essentially, I think personally, a response to that, wanting that gender role and wanting that traditional gender role fulfilled, and that idea of having someone who is willing to fulfill those roles in home. So I know apps like Hinge and Bumble, you can put your love languages. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, that's maybe a route that you could go down.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. What about you, Sarah? What do you think about dating apps?
Well, actually, I wanted to just respond to what Emma just said, which I thought was interesting. The fact that women, I didn't know this, but that women who put acts of service, which basically means that that's their love language, that they want someone to do things for them. I think it's kind of an indication that the feminine is, again, receptive. Like she wants to receive, whereas the masculine wants to be the provider. And I think it's an indication if many men are actually responding to that positively, that men actually do want to be providers. They do actually want to give to women, and they want women to be more open and receptive. So I thought that was an interesting note that you mentioned. But as far as apps go, I mean, I think they're just a tool. You know what I mean? Like they're a tool you can use. I don't mean tool in a negative way. I'm like, it's a tool. No, I'm not talking about that. It's a tool that you can use to meet people. I think if you use it, effectively, you may have success. I don't think it's a necessity. I mean, I personally, I'm old, and I'm maybe the only one here that's old enough to remember like when online dating started, and like you had to sit down at a computer, and like there was no swiping, like you had to like create a profile, and like it was all that, and I was in a relationship when the swiping apps and stuff all got really popular. So I wasn't really involved in them. But when I went through my divorce, I kind of got like pressured into trying them. And I didn't meet anyone. It wasn't like it was successful or anything. I did it for a few months just until it just kind of got like not pleasant anymore. But I did find it to be a really great learning experience, because I think you get a lot of people kind of right in front of you all at the same time. And I started to notice like the patterns in like the guys that I was attracting, the things that were triggering me, that were like, oh, okay. And I think if you use it like as a tool to kind of observe your own responses, what you're attracted to, what you're not attracted to, you can actually learn a little bit more about yourself as far as your dating patterns and stuff. And because you get all these people all in the same place at the same time, as opposed to just out in everyday life. You might meet someone here, you might meet someone there, but when you get it all at the same time, you can kind of, I found it to be a really great learning experience for myself as far as, what I was looking for, what I wasn't looking for and stuff. So I think you can use them for the positive. They can also be really draining. So I think if they get really draining and you start to get really bitter and frustrated, then I say like they're not worth it. But I do think you can use them as a positive tool in dating and even in self growth.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Let me pass it to Daniela. Daniela, what do you think? I know you used to be well known in the Tinder space. What do you what do you think about dating apps?
Dating apps are risky for women and damaging for men. It's risky for women because you're cutting out a social dynamic that usually allows women to gauge safety from a distance. And usually women are very good at intuition and gauging safety, especially from men. So hence why it's very risky, but it's damaging for men because there is, most men don't get access to sex. That used to be from the dawn of time up until now, it's still the same. Most feminine men aren't very attracted to women, and some feminine men are queer by nature in some way or form. So they, in terms of heterosexual dynamic, they don't get access to women's sex or female sex. So it's damaging in the sense that men will go through these apps thinking they have a chance, and the other nature of men is that we're brutally honest. When we know we're ugly, we're fucking ugly. So I'm sorry to use that language, but that's how brutal it is. We know we are. But when there's a dating app that comes by, often most men think that this is the chance that they will get access to sex. Whereas if you're an ugly guy, you usually would gain access to commitment with females, usually in other means, and that's usually where masculine frame comes into play. You would have to build substantial value. You would have to make good money, be financially stable, emotional intelligent to a certain degree. So those were compensated for how you would look as a male. But with dating apps, it's damaging because men who are ugly and don't necessarily will get vetted by women for their looks will have a full sense of entitlement that I have an app, I will put up the most appealing sort of display of who I am as a man on these apps, and I should get at least some bites from women. So it's I guess it delves a lot to why there's such a movement now that's widely recognized as MGTOW, where men are going their own way. There's a lot of entitled men within the dating marketplace, and I think those apps are damaging to them, and especially if you don't have good male friends who can regulate that sort of attention that you're seeking for female, in the sense of, dude, you're ugly, go to the gym, improve how you look, or try and get that promotion at work, because look alone won't get you there. So yeah, I to my extent, I was successful for somewhat of a reason, because there are certain dynamics that I played within the dating apps, but most men don't usually have that, and with dating apps it misconstrue the fact that men have to work for it.
All right, no worries. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Daniela. Jessica, did you want to add on anything to this question you brought up? No, no worries. I think for me, it's like, as far as the dating apps, I don't think it's probably not the best place to look to find a good partner or find a long-term relationship, because it's really hard to gauge somebody of who they are, like the character, the personality, the values through a dating app. And obviously, people on dating apps, you just put on your dating app of what people want, what you want people to see, but not really who you really are. That's why I think I prefer meeting people in person. But I don't know if you guys know this, but I do read up a lot of studies when it comes to dating apps. I think somebody did post it on the live chat. I think it's really hard especially for women. What they found was, they did some studies on Tinder and Hinge, like the top dating apps. What they found was like 80% of the likes that the women, 80% of the likes that women gave men only went to 5% of the men, and the majority for men, they found they swiped right the majority of the women. So most men found the majority of the women are likable, and they swiped right on those women. But when it came to the women, majority of their likes went to only like 5% of the men. So they're like, all the women were all pursuing, like, the most attractive, or the most good looking, or the most socioeconomic stable man. So like, I think, I don't know if a lot of women realize this, but I think if you're in a dating app, you're pretty much competing for only like a small percentage of men, whether you're aware of it or not. And a lot of times, these men who realize that they're in those positions, they understand that they have a lot of options. So I think it's really hard to navigate and attract a good relationship from the women's perspective or the men's perspective, because majority of people, they use it for sex. But if you really want to find a good partner, especially if you're a woman, most women biologically, they want to be attracted to the best quality man they can get. But usually, for a lot of that, if you look at the data with the dating apps, most of the likes go to a small percentage of men. That's why Daniela said, A lot of guys don't have access to sex. That's why majority of the guys are dating apps. They don't get no likes. They don't get no attraction from females. And I don't think instead of putting in the work, instead of taking the time to reflect, you know what, I'm not getting attraction with these women. I have no chance with these women. Let me take a step back, look within myself as a man. What can I do to build value? What can I do to be more attractive? I think a lot of men don't do that. They just keep swiping, and living this fantasy that they can. Social media often tells them, "Hey, you just keep swiping, and somebody will reply back." And I think it doesn't. I just think it doesn't do a good job of. I think that's Daniel said, to improve men, be better men. But a lot of men will just keep swipe, and I don't know if you ladies, if you guys also use that. Did you guys oftentimes found a lot of guys that you liked on the profiles, that did they respond back, or did he work out for any of them? Did you ever have any successful potentials, or did you pretty much nothing happened?
I almost have like the opposite experience in the sense that I felt like I got loads of men, like kind of like inundating almost. It felt like there was way more men on the app and way more men who were interested in pursuing. I mean, I know I'm a very I know like you've already been speaking to me, so you actually have a sense of who I am, but like I'm aware that like I'm a very feminine presenting woman. I'm very small and petite and relatively pretty, I think. But like, but I did feel like it kind of went the other way. Like I felt like there was way more male attention than that theory would suggest, personally.
All right, okay, yeah. Also, and before we move on to the next topic, I think also one thing I do notice sometimes, because there's a lot of men on there who don't get attention. So a lot of men who like DM these women, or reply to your stories, or like your pictures. I think a lot of times, a lot of women, they get all this unsolicited likes from men, because there's a lot of men out there that they don't have access to sex. They don't like anything that they look attractive, and sometimes for a lot of women, because they see these likes, I think I do see that a lot of women, they think that if they're not attractive, if you're not, as a woman, because I do believe that like if you're not getting what you want out of life, you have to always look within yourself. So if you're not getting the results you want, especially whether it's life or especially if it's dating, if you're not attracting the man or the woman that you want, then you have to kind of look within yourself. What can I do to improve, to make sure I can attract the type of partner that I want? And I think sometimes, especially for women, if you're always getting all these likes from men, I think a lot of times a lot of women will not, who think, even if they have bad behaviors, even if they have bad habits, that maybe the reason why they're not attracting the type of man they want, but because they're always getting the attention from all these men on social media. I think sometimes they think, all these guys are in my DMs, all these guys like my pictures. I think I'm good. I'm at a good place. I think I'm still attractive, but never looking within themselves. You know what? Why aren't I attracting the man that I want? But because you're always getting attention, sometimes women will confuse that. Oh, I'm good. Like, as I still have people in my DM, I still have thousands of guys that still liking my pictures. Oh, I don't need to do any work. I'm perfect at the way I am. But I think if you're not getting the results you want, I think you have to look within yourself, ask yourself that question. Like, do I need to improve? But for men, we rarely get any likes, so we know that, oh shit, if I want attraction from a woman, I have to work on myself. Like, I gotta be more masculine, be more assertive, more confident, more courageous. Make sure I'm financially stable to even get like a couple of likes from women. But I think from most women, you guys always get likes all the time, so you never really have to go to that self-reflection phase to ask yourself, maybe it's not the men, maybe it's maybe it's me. It's just something I've noticed with a lot of women who are on social media. But just wanted to throw that in there. Anybody wanted to add on real quick?
I do.
Well, I think if you get enough DMs with guys being like, show me your bobs, like eventually you're like, okay, I need to fix something in my life to stop that from happening. Like, there's definitely.
No, I've had podcasts with women before, and I've met women before who are like, they always fail in every relationship. And sometimes, like, you can tell that there are certain things that you can kind of like give some criticism. Hey, you ever looked at this? You looked at this? They're like, no, I don't need to change. You see my DM? My DM is full of men. I don't need to change.
I think like,
and they don't. What they don't realize is they're confusing sexual attention from commitment attention. So you're getting sexual attention from men, but they don't understand there's a difference between sexual attention. Just because guys because biologically, when we see something beautiful, we're gonna like it. So just because you're getting sexual attention from men doesn't necessarily mean those guys want to give you long-term commitment and take the responsibility for you and the children. Billie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think what you're like, a lot of times that comes from women who are really young. Like, especially when you're young and you're getting a lot of attention, you're in that phase of wanting to get attention and to just have fun and all of that kind of stuff. But then if you've had years of dating, you get to a point where you're just like, I want something better. And all this attention doesn't really matter, because you're going to start realizing, like for me, for example, after having all that attention, having all those likes and all those kinds of things, I stopped going on social media and I started to work on myself and looked at my relationships, like what is going on? And it's not because of the likes, it's because I realized my relationship pattern wasn't working for me. And so as you get older, you kind of realize like all those things don't really matter, and you have to push them to the side and start working on better things if you actually want to get the relationship that you want. But if you're just like trying to have fun and date and enjoy your life, that attention, I guess, feels good. So it's like, oh, it's like for my ego. But it gets to a point where you're just like, this attention doesn't really matter, and you want something more.
You know what's the worst thing? Like, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Just to kind of follow up with it, I think when you're secure within yourself, you don't seek external validation from others. So the extra likes, the flaming heart eye emojis, the whatever, millions of guys in your DMs actually is kind of annoying, because it's not what you're like on social media for. I exist in and of myself, and I don't exist to get the validation from men. But I do agree with Billie, like when you're not a secure person or you are younger and you're using it for the ego boost, it is really nice to have whatever, your DMs full of people. I think when you do that inner work though, and you become secure within yourself and you're not looking to validation from others, if you know you have an issue, you have an issue. People sliding in your DMs and telling you're hot doesn't change the fact that you have, mental health problems or trauma or PTSD from dating, et cetera, et cetera.
I think the worst thing that can ever happen to a young girl or women in general is if a blue checkmark or celebrity slides in your DM, because that will validate. A lot of women will not. Oh, so you know what? I can attract Drake. I can attract Future. I can celebrate this NBA star. I'm good. Because I've heard that a lot of women is like, because they thought that they can because a celebrity, because a blue checkmark was in their DM, that they thought they're like, oh, like I don't need to change at all. But like they said, but they don't know the difference between sexual attention and committed attention. And those celebrities, I would guess, probably just wanted to have sex with you and move on. But I would hear from a lot of women that they attracted a celebrity and they're on the top of the world, and there's not really any necessary changes within them. Ladies, did you guys ever had any blue check marks slid in your DMs? Any celebrities?
I did. I mean, not a big deal, but like it was like an athlete or something. But I mean, I'm older, so like I'm not I'm not as swayed. And I didn't know who they were, but they did have a blue check mark and they played for some team or something. But like I have a really hardcore rule: if a man messages me with just hi, it's like blocked. Like I block immediately. And he messaged me with just a hi, and I was like, block. Like I don't care. Blue check mark, no, but I don't care. Like just block. I don't hi. It's like what? No, like I need more than that, and I'm just done. So I was like out of it. But I'm also at an age where I can, I don't care. That stuff doesn't really impress me. So
I'm gonna ask a hard question, and ladies, be honest. Just be honest. I'm gonna ask a very hard question. A lot of the conversation, a lot of men, a lot of women say they won't give the guys attention, but there's always a certain level of guy that eventually, depending how high he goes in life in society, that a lot of women will say they won't say this. They will say no to that guy, but eventually there will be a certain type of guy, depending who he is in this world. They're like, they'll kind of bend their rule for them. Is that true? Like, if it's a guy that's a celebrity or somebody you really look up to in society, is very famous, he has a lot of well-known in the world, you may have a rule say, if he says hi, you're not going to give him no attention. But if that specific type of guy says hi, you may kind of bend your rule a little bit, because is that true or not? Because that's something I do hear from a lot of men. It depends on the guy. Men, like women, will say no, but if it's a certain type of guy, especially the guy they like, it will kind of make bend their rule for him to kind of try it out with him. Is that true or not? If it's like,
It
I don't know,
depends on what
who's
you want. It depends on what you want, and I mean,
yeah.
I worked for 15 years as a stand-up comedian, so I've met celebrities and things like that, and I've had opportunities in the industry to advance my career if I chose to, and I'm not still doing that, so obviously I didn't choose to advance my career, but I've had opportunities. But in my mind, I am always very grounded in, okay, well, I know what I want long term. And so like some celebrity coming and saying like, hey, you want to hook up? It's like, well, okay, but what is that gonna do for me? Like, are we gonna date? Is it gonna be a relationship? Is this gonna be a commitment? Because if it's not, then there's no point in me just hooking up with you. Like, what, I'm not gonna get what for a story. Like, I don't need that. So I mean, I think it's a matter of knowing what you want. And for some women, I think they might be younger and naive enough to think like, oh, he's my ticket to whatever, and he's my, the guy that's going to discover me or something like that. And like, I think once you get to a certain point in your life where you're like, I know what I want, and you can ask yourself like, is this guy going to give me what I want, and do I want it that way? It was always my thing when I worked, in the industry, was like, okay, I know this guy would probably maybe do something for my career, but like, do I want success that way? And it was always like, no, I don't want success that way. So like, it was pretty easy for me to just turn that down.
I know.
I have this almost like the other way, because I date women. So like, I date men as well, but like, I don't know if there's any guy that could come into my DMs that I would bend any rules for. But like, if Kristen Stewart or someone like just like slid into my DMs and was like, do you want to bang? I'd be like 100%. Like, I wouldn't even question it. I don't care if I get nothing else out of it. Bang Kristen Stewart. I don't care.
Okay. All right.
That'd be good for me.
Stewart, if you're watching this right now, and yeah, you already know where to go. All right, no worries. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that, ladies. That was a great question, Jessica. Thinking about dating apps, and yeah, if everybody on the live chat, let me know what your dating app experience is. I always want to hear what you guys think. But yeah, let me move it up to the next guest. Emma, did you have a question, a topic that you wanted to bring up real quick, and we could kind of move on to that one?
Yeah, I do actually. I wanted to ask Daniela. I know you also wanted to ask me something. I think you mentioned in the chat. But I just wanted to talk about like the way that you've been talking about sex is this kind of like almost transactional thing, as this idea of like that men wanting access to sex and that being something that the woman provides rather than something that the woman necessarily wants or has desires or questions for. It seems like there's an idea of this of like it's something that a woman has to restrict access to or allow access to, rather than this being something that works both ways, in the sense that a woman may well want access kind of back the other way. I was just interested in kind of your opinion on it, because it just, in your opinion, it seemed to be quite a transaction, almost like almost one-sided in the idea of like a man wanting sex and it's something being not necessarily the woman wants in the same way.
Unless a woman consent, which is a big topic for you ladies in the modern day, unless a woman consents to sex, no man will ever get access to it unless forcefully. That's a big difference. So when a woman wants to have sex or don't want to have sex, you get either one. When a man wants to have sex, he will have to go through certain things in order to have access to it. Just because I want to have sex doesn't mean I get it straight away. But when a woman does, almost any male under this sun will say yes to a female who turns up in their doorstep and say, hey, I want to have sex. I want to do it with you. Almost every male who's heterosexual will say yes. So that's the big difference. It's not transactional. It's sex used to be the hanging fruit that men endeavored to gain access into. And in order to gain access into that, they had to be protected and providers. There were values attached to it. Look, if you want to have sex and preserve your DNA or genetics for the next generation, you have to be a good man. You have to be a man that I can feel safe in your presence. And you have to be a good father in order to teach our children some morals and ethics that aligns with how I see the world as a woman also. So it's, although I guess there's sort of a nuance to maybe equality in your sense, when a man wants sex and a woman wants sex, it should be the same thing. And you can correct me on that one if that's how you view it, but it's not the same. When a woman wants to have sex, almost any man will say yes, but when a man wants sex, no woman's going to give it to him unless she's either promiscuous or she's saying, hey, dude, you want sex? What the hell do you bring to the table?
Okay, thank you for
All right.
answering.
I had a question to just, I think it's kind of related to your question, because one of the things I do here, especially when it comes to the, what a man has to bring to it, what a man has to bring to the table and what a woman has to bring to the table. Ladies, because one of the things I do here today is like a lot of the quality of what a man has to bring. Because I do hear from a lot of women, they would say a lot of the men are not ambitious enough. They don't want to be provider protectors. They don't want to be responsible. But of course, like this, that's why Danielle brought up, women control access to sex. So men have to kind of build some kind of value to earn his ability to have access to you, not only in your life, but also physically to be intimate with you. But do you feel like that the dating standards today of what women put on men to prove them to be good men, do you think that has watered down or has diminished, that quality has low, or the standards, the bar has been lowered? Because traditional dating back in the day, our parents, our great parents' time, in order for a man to have access to sex, he had to marry the woman, he had to meet the family, he had to meet the father. So there were hurdles. So there was hurdles and hoops and processes that a man had to do to prove to a woman that he was capable of being a good man and wanted commitment. But in modern society, we have kind of gone away from that traditional dating. So men no longer have to prove no more to get access to sex. They can just slide in a DM and say hi, like Sarah said, to say hi on your DM. And for a lot of guys that works, guys. So women don't no longer get married no more to have sex, or no longer get married no more to have kids. So uh, what is your? I guess my question is, what is your process to vet a man to make sure it's good? Is what is it now, or also what was it when you were younger? Is it still the same when you were younger? Because what I think one of the things that we do notice today is, especially today in this era of casual dating, casual sex, when it's more open for women to have the liberation to explore themselves sexually. So a lot of times I do see for a lot of women, they would in their 20s have just be open to having sex with random men, but they realize, I think, when they get older and they want to settle down and they want to find a good man, their standards will start to change. Did you guys ever go through that process? Or did you always have the same process as far as vetting a man? Or did you learn the hard way where you probably never had a process of vetting a guy and then the guy broke your heart, or the guy didn't fulfill his responsibility as a good man, as a good father, and then you have to learn how to change and how to vet the guy? Because that's one of the things that they always bring up in today's standards is the dating standard, and what men have to do to have access to you is the standards are low. Men don't have to prove themselves no more, and that's why there's a big debate. Is the problem with the women, or is the problem with the men? Do men have to get better to become better men, or do the women have to be better as far as the selections of who they choose to go in bed with and to have children with? What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts about that? I'll start with you, Maria. What do you think?
I think maybe both. I think the older you get, you're around more mature men, so they respect you more and they want you to wait, maybe. Whereas when you're younger, the guys just want to get straight to it. And then the girls, if they don't value themselves, they're more likely to have sex quicker and sooner, I think, because they might use that as like, oh, he likes me, or like use that as a validation from the men or something to like them. But I think it can be both ways depending on like maybe like maturity and stuff.
Okay. No worries. And what do I mean for you? Like, what's your process like? How do you vet a guy? Like, how do you make sure you select a good man and make sure that he's a good man before he has access to you? Like, what's your process?
Well, just getting to know them. And, I mean, my last partner, we did have sex pretty soon, which is why I ended up pursuing him. But I feel like that was a mistake. Because that happened, I ended up just like pursuing him because I almost felt like not like I had to, but we just gone as far as we possibly could, and it just kind of allowed me to follow his lead as being in the relationship, and then it ended up not working out. And I feel like had we not have had sex so soon, and I like took more time to like get to know him, we probably wouldn't have dated as long. So I think it is important. Like I personally rather wait, but that's just me.
Okay. All right, no worries. All right. Thank you for sharing it, Maria. Let me pass it to you, Jessica. What do you think about the vetting process today as far as the dating? Well, like, to make sure that the man has to prove himself to be a good man to have sex with you.
I think when I was younger, I probably had more time. So if some guy that I was interested in would, take me on a date, it was, I guess, sufficient for me to give him the right to date me. So if I found him attractive and he took me out to a really nice restaurant or bought me nice gifts, like that was a sufficient enough vetting process. With how busy I am now and just getting older and more mature, I obviously find that looks and money doesn't take you that far. There has to be some kind of compatibility. So if I don't feel that compatibility with someone, I don't feel as like they're entitled to my time as much. So it's less about, can they take me to, the 4-star restaurant? Can they buy me really nice gifts? Like that's the added bonus. But I think the underlying vetting process is, do I feel comfortable with them? Am I compatible with them? Do we have shared interests, shared values? Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere.
All right, no worries. All right, thank you for sharing that, Jessica. Pass it to Sarah. What's your thoughts on the dating process? Do you think the standards are lower now, or it's just something they definitely need to work on and improve on? And what do you think about the dating process today, modern society, modern dating?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a both and, where I do think that men definitely need to step up, and I think that women need to hold them accountable for that, for sure. Because that's just the way that society runs the best. When men step up and they're at their best, and women hold them to that. I really do think that that's just how everything runs the best. I know from my own experience, I've always been very consistent in what I was looking for in a man, and I was very honest with myself about what I wanted in a man, but I wasn't necessarily holding a man accountable. And I was very much in this sort of fairy tale, like anytime a guy told me that that's who he was, I just automatically believed it and was like, oh, here's my Prince Charming. And in my younger years, I definitely jumped into things too quickly and had to learn the hard way. And then as I've gotten older, I've discovered a big lesson that I had to learn is that his words and his actions need to align, because that's not something I used to hold men to. I used to actually, if a man told me who he was, I always thought in my mind, well, that's who he is. And then the more he would show me that that's not who he was, I was like, oh, but he said that that's who he was. And I would hold on to that for way too long. And I've discovered over the years that his words and his actions need to align. And then for me, I'm very good at like boundaries, and how does he react when I set a boundary? Can he handle that? I need someone who aligns with my values and things like that. Like those things are super important. I also personally, I want a man who's a protector and a provider. I will be 100% honest in saying that I have no interest in being the breadwinner. I completely and totally want a man who will financially support me and actually wants to be a protector and provider. And I at this point in my life, I don't want anything less than that, because anything less than that is not going to add to my life. It's just going to drain from me. And I'm not looking for a relationship that's going to drain me. I'm looking for a relationship that's going to add to my life as opposed to take away from it. So, and for me, I've been actively celibate for quite a while now. And because that's just, I don't have any interest in giving anyone access to my body if they're not showing me that they are the type of person that I'm looking for.
All right, no worries. All right, so you want he has to be a provider protector, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You're looking for a
This is Sparta!
Yes. Yes.
You're looking for a Spartan.
I'll
You're
take one of those. Oh yeah.
Ready to ride or die. Oh, for this woman. All right, no worries. Let me pass it to you, Emma. Emma, what do you think? What do you think about the vetting process today? In modern society compared like back in the day? What do you think about that?
I think the bar is on the floor in terms of what women are expecting from men at this point. Like, especially when I spent time, I do a lot of acting, so I'm often around women who are in their late teens and early 20s, and their attitudes and their expectations towards men are really discouraging and really sad. Like, there is just a complete lack of trust, a complete lack of faith in the dating process, in this idea that people are manufacturing a version of themselves for this pool, and people aren't being honest with who they are and aren't being honest about what they want. So people, I feel like it's then they start to create these kind of rules. You have this this red flag culture of kind of like people being like, oh, he doesn't text back straight away, that means he's not interested. But if he has a high powered job, he might not necessarily be able to text back, and that's not necessarily very fair. And you have these things, but because there isn't an expectation anymore for men to be good, the expectation is for men to be bad, and they have to then go above and beyond those expectations in order to actually prove themselves. And I feel like that it's come from a good place, in the sense of the intentions behind it were good, in the sense of saying to women, you should demand more and demand better, and you should be with someone who is honest with you and that can be honest with you and that you can feel safe with and be your true self around and be vulnerable with. Because like you say, dating is a dangerous thing for women. As soon as we enter ourselves into that environment, it's dangerous. Just from the offset, statistically, we know it is. But it's meant that we're in a really it's a really sad position now. I hate to bring a bummer right at the end of the podcast, but like I feel like it is really sad. I feel like we need to get to a place where we can actually be honest with each other again, trust each other again. I mean, even this conversation, like this discussion that we were having, we've got 7 very different voices on here, 7 very different opinions, and I feel like we disagree on a lot of stuff, many of us, or have different ideas or different aspects of things, but this has been a very, very healthy discussion, and we've all been able to be honest and true about what we want and how we feel and who we are. And we just need to move forward away from this kind of manufacturing and away from this kind of sanitizing and this censoring of ourselves, so that we can actually get to a position where we're not taking what someone's saying and reading 1,000 meanings into it and being like, oh, he sent me 3 emojis, so therefore he's a psychopath. Like, what? Like, people do this though, and I feel like it's insane. We've got to this point where where there's so little trust in this whole environment. The bars are so low for what women are expected to get and expected to receive, and the bar is so low as well for what men are wanting from women. As in, like you say, if the bar is the access to sex, and then it's the the potential for a wife and mother, that's a very narrow view of a relationship, and it's a very narrow view for a woman as well, to just be like a protector and provider. There's so much more to it. So we really need to open up and start having those genuine moments with each other, and stop reading into things so much and just allow ourselves that space to actually be safe again. It's really sad that we've got to that point where we feel like we can't be.
Okay. All right. No worries. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Emma. And then Billie, what's your thoughts about the vetting process today?
I think that this whole thing about sex starts really early. And I think a lot of women, and like this conversation needs to be taught to little girls, because I think a lot of it starts with like the whole concept of virginity it's been taken away from women. And so a lot of girls lose it in such a young at such a young age. And that like leads to them being more hypersexual. And like when I was young, you were like shamed for it. So once you lost it, you lost your value. And so when hookup culture came in, that was when women could gain that power back. But I think it kind of like backfired. And it's like, it's become this thing about like using each other, like who can use this person more than they could use the other person. And I think it has become very unhealthy. And I think it just goes back to I don't know, like, because I'm celibate myself, and when I became celibate, that's when I started to realize how much sex had an impact on me as a person and my relationships and all those kinds of things. And as I was working through that, I started to undo a lot of things. And now when I think about having sex again, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about like back in the traditional days, because I used to say, oh, first I'm gonna find a really nice, kind guy, but guys lie, you know, like they will like pretend for me, like I've had dudes like, so how long are you gonna wait? And I'll tell them like, I don't know, like, but they will plot for that time period so that they could pretend to be. There was this viral video going around where this guy was like, I'll pretend to be your man for 2 weeks, a month, until you give it to me. And so my vetting process also has changed. And right when you said the whole thing about traditional, meet my family, get to know me, and all those kinds of things, that's how I would vet now. But I think it's also just a bigger conversation, especially with social media nowadays. Sex is just being introduced at such an early age, and the girls and young boys are just like having sex at like really quickly, which leads to like a hypersexuality when they grow older. So I really think that like it needs to be a conversation we start at an early age versus like this whole discussion of like, oh, like hookup culture is a problem and all these. I think there was such a bigger problem in the past of how we view sex, virginity, and all those things, because we have such a bad relationship with sex and having those discussions to the point where it's harming us in the long term.
Okay, all right, yeah. Sharing that, Billie. And before we conclude the podcast, Daniela, what's your final thoughts, Daniela, just real quick to the topic?
Repeat the question, because I've got something completely different running through my head.
What's your thoughts about the vetting process today compared to back in the day? All right, so a lot of times, we hear the conversation from the women. Men need to be better, become better men, and then of course hear the men's side. Oh, women just need to choose better, have better choices than men, and on the process of how they choose men.
Yeah, so there are two things. So from a woman's perspective and also the male's perspective. So from a woman's side, I've always harped on about two things and two things only. Accountability and resilience. Those are two things you can't fake as a man. Those are just two traits absolutely cannot fake. And accountability for a man and how I view it and how I deploy it is it's not necessarily saying you're wrong, but essentially owning up to things that you have sort of fallen short on, and in the same time ensuring by vowing that you will actively work towards bettering yourself and meeting a certain standard that's demanded of you, especially in the dating market. And resilience is when shit hits the fan, essentially you're willing to stand there and not only take that upon yourself, but also your partner at the same time, who's probably under the same sort of anxiety that if he's going through this, I wonder how he's going to react. I hope he's fine. All of these things. So I don't understand how masculinity has sort of transformed over the years, but I find it very sad that there are men out there who stand and often try and take on a demeanor where it's damaging. And here's a example of it. Vast majority of social media now is filled with men essentially pouring their hearts out on social media, whether that's a sad story or, men, we need to get together and be there for each other. That's damaging in the sense that only a feminine woman can bring that therapy, and that therapy is just presence alone. A feminine woman's presence is therapeutic enough for a man to be able to get up the next morning and say, man, the world is shit today, but I'm going to do my best. And if my best is not enough today, tomorrow's another day. That sort of therapy, you cannot find that in another man, and you cannot find that outside of that dynamic relationship, which is why I value my wife as a woman, and I value her above all else. Why? She brings a nature within her and her femininity that I cannot find anywhere, and I will not find it with a professional who's learned about my psyche for 20 years, and I'll never find it with another man out in the real world. I can find courage, but I will never find that therapy with that woman. For the men's side, there's a lot of conversation around Chad and Tyrone. And the reason why there's a lot of conversation around there, if the women are aware of the red pill community, it's often preached that women will make no exceptions for Chads and Tyrones. There's usually a reason why that is, and it's only because they beat almost any other man within the dating market to the punch. That's all it is. And there's only two natures to them. It's confidence in the way that they communicate to women, and they don't pander to emotion. In the sense that if a woman is emotional, they will acknowledge it, but they won't pander to it. They will communicate, okay, I see you're emotional. Do you need my support, or do you need me to just listen, or do you need me to remove myself? Rather than saying, oh, I'm sorry going through this, oh, I'll be there, blah, blah. Almost in my experience and talking to a lot of other men and women and sort of dating, that's usually not the case, that women find that attractive. Most women, from what I hear, is that they find a man who's completely honest in the sense that, do you want my support, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to remove myself? That level of communication is what's often be found attractive. And if you look at Chads and Tyrones, in a sense, that's what they usually do. They usually communicate very effectively and direct in the sense of, just in the early example. And the other thing is, it's just physical presence. Either they are physically attractive to a certain degree, they're tall, they're fit, or they have a physical presence where essentially when they walk into the room, there's a sense of leadership and safety within their presence. So I guess, and this is sort of response to some comments in the chat. If you possess those two qualities, you can only supplement that with resilience and accountability. If you're really wanting a woman who is going to be the partner that you're looking for, traditional women in modern day, you'll never find that unless you go to a Muslim country or go into a cult or in religion. I think the dynamic of women nowadays is very complicated in the sense that there are presence of both in there, and oftentimes it's required. So let's say you're in a low socioeconomic suburban area, you both need to work, you need to be combative to a certain degree, but there should be a time limit as to how that dynamic works. And to me, and my whole sort of view on relationship is that as a man, if you're not necessarily earning over 50k a year and you're wanting to have a family, you should be at least 150k a year plus. And that is to ensure that the woman you're with has some level of security and safety in your care. But not only that, give her the option. Not say you can't go to work, but give you the option of, if you want to go study, if you want to go work, there is not going to be a heavy financial burden if you did one or the other. And not only that, it brings value. It brings a lot of value to any man who looks to attain that type of financial means. And not necessarily power and how people sort of see it as tyranny, but if you're willing to go 150k and above, those jobs usually require you to be some sort of a leader, have some sort of value, be respected by your peers. So those values in the homes are very beneficial. You're respected by a woman a lot better if you use that in a way that it's healthy and communicate that effectively with whoever your partner is. So I guess that's why I wanted to address the Chad and Tyrone. It's not that they are inherently advantageous towards any other average man. The only advantage that I've sort of seen is that their physical presence indicates safety. And not only that, they can navigate conversations. That's only the two qualities. From there, you can set pretty much anything up, whether that's emotional, intelligent. If you can navigate conversation in a way where you understand women by nature are delusional. And that's not saying that in the sense of trying to attack women. The reason why women are delusional by nature is the fact that they're nurturing. If a woman has a child, almost any woman will love that child regardless of how he behaves and acts in public. Even if he's a murderer or a rapist, most mothers will feel an innate love for that child. And that's very needed, especially in early development of children. It's needed because children need safety first before any sort of discipline and guidance and nurturing by the father is needed. So delusional is not, I guess, could be used in a better way. It's hopeful. You see potential in men, and that's often why you're swayed within the dating market by a lot of men who fail you within that dynamic. So you're hopeful of the potential that there is going to be something good come out of it. That's actually needed. and that's actually needed when you have children. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Daniela. And yeah, ladies, we have come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for all you ladies, and thank everybody in the live chat. I guess my 10-second response to that question everybody brought up, the vetting process. All I want to say is I think for women and men as well, if you want a traditional partner, I think you have to. I think if you want a modern partner, then you have to be modern. I think the problem with today is a lot of men and women, especially the women, they want to live a modern lifestyle, a modern role, a modern relationship, but they still want a traditional man. I think for me, that's just the problem. Like if you want hey, it's your life, your choices, you know. But if you want a traditional relationship and a traditional type of man, and you want him to be masked in a certain role, then you have to be a traditional woman and bring out and be a feminine woman. And have you can't have the cake and eat it too. You can't have it. I think that's just for me is like this today, and the men as well. Like, hey, I want a traditional woman. Then they act like dogs out there. All right, so this is my opinion on that. But ladies, thank you so much for making it to the end of the podcast. And yeah, we had some great discussions. We had a variety of topics, and we agreed to a lot of things, and we disagreed to a lot of things. But thank you for having these open conversations. And I know sometimes this conversation is not easy for a lot of people to have. But thank you for having an open mind, for having these open discussions. And I know the live chat. Thank you for the live chat. And I know a lot of you guys had your opinions as well. But ladies, what's your final thoughts from tonight's podcast? What's your takeaway from tonight's discussion? How can people find you? So that way people can find you as well and support your platforms. I'll start with you, Maria. What's your final thoughts on tonight's discussion, and how can people find you?
My final thoughts on how. I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said?
Yeah. Well, what's your final takeaway from tonight's podcast? Well, how can people find you if they want to support you on your social media platforms?
I thought it was pretty interesting to see different perspectives. For sure, I agreed with a lot of what people were saying and disagreed with other things. So it was interesting just to hear the different opinions and everything. And then my Instagram is @retro RIRI.
All right, no worries. Thank you so much, Maria. Appreciate you having on tonight's podcast and sharing your opinion and sharing your thoughts. I'll pass it to you, Billie. Billie, what's your final thoughts from tonight's discussion, and how can people find you?
It was actually such a great talk, and I would say there were some opinions I came in with and changed them as well, just listening from all of you, especially even the male's perspective, where I had some beliefs that I had and I was set in stone, but I loved being in here and listening to y'all and taking in some of those things and actually being able to change my opinion and actually having a discussion that we all disagree and still have a peaceful conversation without disrespecting each other. And you could also find me on, I'm mostly on TikTok at Billie Emali, BILLIEEMALI, as well as Instagram. Thank you.
I'm just curious. What opinion did you change? I'm just curious.
I would say that I on the whole I think somebody said that it's okay. That's something about traditional roles aren't exactly something that should be looked down upon. I think somebody else said something. I think Sarah and one of the other girls was talking about. Oh yeah, Sarah was talking about how we look at feminine roles as a bad thing, and I really liked to hear that part because sometimes I do look down upon oh, I don't want to be. Being a woman and doing these traditional roles is a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And that's how I always looked at it. And that's why I probably got in so many arguments with men, no, we're not all like that. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I really liked having that perspective. And then also, you didn't really change my mind. You just added on to why I'm celibate and gave me a reason as to why I'll probably stay celibate for a long time I am traditional now that I think about it because I used to think I'm very much modern. But for myself, I do think that the vetting process, it is way more traditional than it was modern. But yeah.
No worries. Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad to have Sarah to be a part of here and change your opinion. It's good to hear from Sarah. Sarah, what's your final thoughts and how can people find you?
Well, first of all, I'm honored. Thank you that anything that I said affected anybody. I really am. And yeah, I love having discussions like this because I feel like, I mean, especially nowadays, it's so easy to just only hear what we want to hear and not listen to the other side and not actually have these respectful, open discussions. It's just so easy for everybody to just sort of like get set in their ways and just butt heads all the time. And also to get censored or to censor ourselves or to censor each other. And I think freedom of speech is hugely important in having these discussions and stuff. So I really appreciate you asking me to be here. And if anyone wants to follow me, I have a blog, a YouTube channel, and I'm on TikTok at Everyday Starlet. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's my name at Sarah Blodgett.
All right, no worries. Thank you, Sarah. And I would say, anybody out there, a lot of women, if you want to know how to be feminine, check out Sarah's page.
Thank you.
Check out Sarah's page. She gives some great content when it comes to femininity. But thank you so much, everybody. We have come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much. Shout out to the guests. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate the conversations. And of course, definitely like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next Saturday. And we have a different panel and different topic to discuss. But ladies, thank you so much. You guys have a good night. Good night, y'all. Peace.
Bye.
Y'all. Bye.